Grief touches us all, yet no two journeys are the same. Whether from loss, change, or heartbreak, healing takes time. This collection of books offers comfort, guidance, and hope, helping you navigate pain, honor your feelings, and find strength in stories and wisdom shared by others. In the Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, the type of grief addressed is the personal loss of her husband, with undertones of anticipatory grief as she navigates her daughter's illness. Its tone is raw and honest, exposing the mind's attempts to control or rewrite tragedy. The format is a memoir, secular in nature, with no religious framing, making it relatable across many backgrounds. It is rooted in lived experience rather than clinical research, aimed at adults coping with bereavement. Its depth is profound and introspective rather than light, as Didion dissects the minutiae of her mourning. As an acclaimed writer, her credibility comes from her literary and reflective skills rather than therapeutic training. Readers consistently praise its emotional resonance and its ability to articulate what they could not express. There are no structured tools or exercises, but its reflective nature offers an indirect guide for understanding grief. Paul Kalanithe's When Breath Becomes Air addresses personal loss and the transition into facing one's mortality rather than the grief of survivors. It is raw, tender, and inspirational in tone, neither fully comforting nor purely instructive, but a blend of medical insight and philosophical reflection. The format is memoir, with secular yet contemplative elements on meaning and purpose. It is drawn from lived experience, primarily for adult readers, particularly those facing illness or supporting someone who is. The book offers moderate depth, inviting contemplation without structured exercises. Kalanithi, as a neurosurgeon and writer, lends credibility through both professional knowledge and intimate narrative. Reviews praise its courage and its ability to transform fear of death into a meditation on living. There are no practical tools, but its narrative serves as a profound mirror for readers. Max Porter's Grief is the Thing with Feathers explores the death of a mother in a family, using surreal, poetic, and fragmented prose. The tone is raw yet artistically comforting in its own way, not practical but emotionally charged. It is reflective and metaphorical in format, secular with hints of myth and folklore. It is based on an imaginative rendering of grief rather than direct experience or psychology, making it suitable for adults or older teens open to abstract expressions of loss. Its depth is moderate, poetic rather than procedural. The author is a novelist, not a grief specialist. Reviews highlight its originality and haunting imagery. There are no explicit tools, only the therapeutic potential of metaphor. Healing After Loss by Martha Whitmore Hickman focuses on personal bereavement with a gentle and comforting tone. It offers daily meditations in a self-help format, secular in nature, and based on both lived experience and insights from spiritual traditions. It is written for adults, particularly those in early or extended mourning. The depth is light to moderate, offering daily companionship rather than deep psychological analysis. Hickman, though not a therapist, is respected for her compassionate approach. Readers appreciate its manageable, day-by-day guidance. Practical tools are included in the form of reflections and meditative prompts. Megan Devine's It's Okay That You're Not Okay addresses both death-related and non-death grief, such as breakups or life changes, with a validating, raw yet gently instructive tone. It is a self-help and reflective guide, largely secular, grounded in the author's own loss and her background as a grief counselor. Its audience is adult mourners seeking truth rather than platitudes. The depth is considerable, with prompts for journaling and self-inquiry. Devine is a therapist and writer, giving her credibility from both professional and lived perspectives. Reviews consistently highlight how it normalizes grief rather than trying to fix it. It includes practical exercises and coping tools. Kevin Young's anthology, The Art of Losing, Poems of Grief and Healing addresses bereavement and a spectrum of losses through poetry. The tone is contemplative and varied depending on the poets, leaning toward reflective rather than instructional. It is an anthology of poetry, secular in scope, and curated from diverse voices. Its evidence base is literary tradition, not science, and it is intended for adult readers or older teens who process through art. The depth is emotional rather than structured. Young is a respected poet and editor, not a grief professional. Reviews praise its range and resonance. There are no practical exercises, only the catharsis of verse. Option B by Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant covers a range of losses, including spousal death and life upheaval, with a practical and inspirational tone. It is a self-help book with personal narrative elements, secular in orientation, and backed by psychological research, Grant, alongside Sandberg's lived experience. The target audience is adults rebuilding after adversity. It is moderately deep with resilience-building strategies. Both authors have credibility, Grant as a psychologist, Sandberg as a high-profile leader who experienced loss. Reviews highlight its actionable strategies and balanced optimism. Practical tools include resilience exercises and discussion questions. Sonali Dareniagala's Wave depicts traumatic grief from the sudden death of her family in the 2004 tsunami. The tone is raw and searing, offering little comfort but a profound testimony. It is a memoir, secular, and wholly based on lived experience. It is intended for adults prepared to face the extremes of trauma-related grief. The depth is intense and immersive. Dareniagala is not a therapist, but her perspective is deeply authentic. Readers describe it as heartbreaking yet unforgettable. There are no exercises or tools. Its power is in bearing witness. Tear Soup by Pat Schwiebert and Chuck DeCline addresses multiple forms of grief, including death, for both children and adults. Its tone is gentle and reassuring. The format is an illustrated storybook, secular, designed to be accessible across ages. It is based on general grief wisdom and experience rather than scientific evidence. It is light in depth, intended as an introduction or companion. The authors have experience in grief support work. Reviews call it comforting for families. It includes reflection questions and simple discussion guides. Joanne Cacciatore's Bearing the Unbearable focuses on bereavement, especially the loss of children, but applicable to many losses. The tone is gentle yet profound, with mindfulness and spiritual undertones. It is a self-help guide with reflective prose, partly rooted in psychology and partly in lived experience. The audience is grieving adults seeking healing practices. The depth is significant, with mindfulness exercises and rituals included. Cacciatore is a grief counselor and professor, lending professional credibility. Reviews often call it life-saving in the midst of despair. Practical tools include meditation and journaling prompts. George A. Bonanno's The Other Side of Sadness addresses personal loss from a research-driven perspective. Its tone is reassuring and informative rather than deeply emotional. The format is psychological research and narrative, secular, and evidence-based. The target audience is adults curious about the science of grief. It is moderate in depth, focusing on understanding resilience. Bonanno is a renowned psychologist, offering strong credibility. Reviews appreciate its myth-busting nature. Practical tools are minimal, but the insights themselves serve as guidance. C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed examines the death of his wife with raw honesty and spiritual questioning. It is reflective, Christian in perspective, and in memoir format. It is based on lived experience and philosophical struggle rather than structured psychology. Its audience is adults, especially those of Christian faith. It is deeply introspective but not instructional. Lewis is a highly regarded writer and thinker. Reviews praise its ability to mirror spiritual wrestling during grief. There are no explicit tools, only profound reflections. On Grief and Grieving by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler revisits the 5 stages of grief for personal loss, but also applies to other losses. It is practical and instructive, secular with spiritual openness, and blends self-help with research. The audience is adults, especially those familiar with the 5 stages model. The depth is significant, with clear frameworks. Both authors are pioneers in grief studies, offering high credibility. Reviews consider it a foundational text. It includes reflection exercises and practical guidance. I Wasn't Ready to Say Goodbye by Brooke Noel and Pamela D. Blair addresses sudden and unexpected death. The tone is compassionate yet practical. The format is a self-help guide, secular, with both lived experience and therapeutic insight. It is targeted at adults experiencing shock. The depth is moderate with actionable steps. Both authors have experience in grief counseling. Reviews highlight its helpfulness for those facing abrupt loss. It includes exercises, checklists, and coping tools. Bob Deitz's life after loss spans multiple forms of grief, death, divorce, job loss, with a practical and encouraging tone. It is self-help, secular, and rooted in counseling expertise. It is aimed at adults navigating transition. The depth is moderate, with actionable strategies. Deitz is a counselor and educator, lending credibility. Reviews note its comprehensive yet approachable nature. It includes tools for rebuilding daily life. Megan O'Rourke's The Long Goodbye explores the loss of her mother with a reflective, literary tone. It is a memoir, secular, based on lived experience, for adult readers seeking emotional resonance. Its depth is more emotional than instructional. O'Rourke is a poet and writer, not a clinician. Reviews praise its lyrical quality. No tools are provided. Its value is companionship in grief. Louise Hay and David Kessler's You Can Heal Your Heart applies to death and non-death grief, offering inspirational and lightly spiritual guidance. It is a self-help guide with affirmations and healing practices. It is suitable for adults open to a mind-body-spirit approach. The depth is moderate, with exercises for self-compassion. Hay and Kessler bring both spiritual and counseling credibility. Reviews highlight its uplifting nature. Practical tools include affirmations and guided exercises. David Kessler's Finding Meaning. The sixth stage of grief addresses personal loss, offering a path beyond acceptance toward creating meaning. Its tone is compassionate and instructional. The format is self-help, secular with some spiritual openness. It is for adults seeking to reframe their grief journey. The depth is considerable, with meaning-making exercises. Kessler is a prominent grief expert, offering strong credibility. Reviews praise its transformative guidance. Tools include reflective practices and prompts. Nisha Zenoff's The Unspeakable Loss is for parents grieving a child, with a compassionate and practical tone. It is a self-help and memoir hybrid, secular with touches of spirituality, based on both her loss and therapeutic training. It is for grieving parents specifically. The depth is meaningful and tender. Zenoff is a therapist and bereaved parent, offering high credibility. Reviews consider it essential for its niche audience. Tools include exercises and coping strategies. Francis Weller's The Wild Edge of Sorrow explores grief as a communal and ecological process, addressing multiple grief types, including cultural and ancestral loss. Its tone is spiritual and reflective. The format is a blend of psychology, ritual, and cultural study. It is for adults interested in community-based or nature-rooted healing. The depth is profound and ritualistic. Weller is a psychotherapist and grief educator. Reviews highlight its transformative, nonlinear approach. Tools include rituals and reflective practices. Grief may change you, but it doesn't have to define you. These books remind you that healing is not about forgetting, but about growing around your pain. You are not alone. Peace and meaning can return, one step at a time.